Welcome to Once Upon a Castle, unlocking the magic of Disney, past and present. I'm Gini, your guide through the parks and the pages of Disney's rich history. Each week, I will share expert tips to help you plan your perfect visit and explore the stories, secrets, and legends that make the magic real. From Walt's vision to today's hidden gems, I will help you feel more connected, more prepared, and more enchanted every step of the way. So, whether you're counting down the days to your next trip or just dreaming of a stroll down Main Street, USA, this is your place to discover the wonder. This is Once Upon a Castle. Welcome back to Once Upon a Castle podcast, friends, the show where we take a stroll down the avenues, attractions, and stories that make Disneyland more than just a park. It's a living, breathing piece of American imagination. Oh my goodness, you guys, I very unexpectedly and unintentionally took more than a month off. We haven't had a new episode in several weeks, and I am so sorry for that. Life just got a little bit crazier than I had expected it to, but we are back, baby. So thanks for hanging in there and bearing with me. Right before we took our little hiatus, we had just wrapped up our time in New Orleans Square. We wandered through the wrought iron balconies, we rode through the Haunted Mansion, you know that one's my favorite, and we sat down with our wonderful friend Teresa Urban to close things out. And now, friends, we're heading just around the bend to a little corner of the park that has quietly reinvented itself not once, not twice, but 3 times over its history. We're stepping into Bayou Country. Now, if that specific name doesn't ring a bell, don't worry. You've absolutely been here before. This is the land that was once Bear Country, then Critter Country, and as of November 2024, it's Bayou Country, home to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And honestly, I don't think there's a more fascinating case study anywhere in the park of how Disneyland evolves while still holding on to the pieces of its own past. We're talking about an attraction that has lived in 4 different lands without ever physically moving. We're talking about a snoring bear named Rufus who's been hiding in this corner of the park since 1972. There is just so much here. So here's how we're going to spend our time together in this series. Today, we're starting with the attractions, where this land came from, who dreamed it up, and how it's transformed from a quiet Pacific Northwest wilderness retreat into the Mardi Gras celebration it is now. Next time, we'll dig into the entertainment that's called this land home. And yes, friends, that means the bears are getting their due. After that, we'll talk food because you know this podcast doesn't skip a meal. And we'll close out the series with a guest conversation I think you're going to love. So grab a fresh pot of honey, don't feed the bears, and let's head into Bayou Country. Now, what's interesting about Bayou Country is that it actually existed itself before the land. And what I mean by that is there was an area of the park called Indian Village, and this was open from 1955 to 1971. This is really the footprint that is now Bayou Country. It sat in Frontierland and was a showcase of Native American culture, including the arts and architecture of several regions and a multi-tribal dance. It was such a really cool place, and Walt worked really hard to honor the heritage and the traditions of our Native people. Its signature attraction was the Indian War Canoes, and that opened July 4th, 1956, with real Native American guides aboard every canoe. The Indian Village closed in 1971 as Disneyland moved away from its style of presentation. The canoe attraction itself didn't disappear. It was rethemed and continued on. So we're going to talk about Bayou Country in a couple of different eras, and actually 3 different eras. So that first era was Bear Country, and Bear Country opened March 4th, 1972, and was open until November of 1988. Now, it was the driving force for the Country Bear Jamboree, which had debuted at Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom on October 1st, 1971. And it was such a hit that Imagineers immediately wanted to copy that and make one at Disneyland. So Disneyland's Bear Country was essentially built around that show. The attraction came first, and the land was then created to house it. Now, because the Florida version was so popular, the Disneyland reincarnation got 2 identical theaters, each playing the full show to handle all of the demand and capacity. This was Disneyland's first major expansion since the Haunted Mansion opened in New Orleans Square in 1969. Now, Bear Country opened, becoming Disneyland's 7th themed land. It cost $8 million to build and covered about 4 acres. It was located on the northwest quadrant of the park, on the far side of the Rivers of America from Main Street, a deliberately quiet, out-of-the-way corner. The Country Bear Jamboree, though, itself didn't open until 3 weeks later on March 24th, 1972. Now, the land was themed to the forests of the Pacific Northwest, a rustic wilderness retreat rather than a flashy showcase. Guests entered along the riverbank, overlooking the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island, which gave an immediate sense of leaving the bustle of the park behind you. It was designed as Disneyland's wilderness retreat, a quieter corner for guests to meet animal characters, grab food, catch a show, and it was really in contrast to the high-energy lands everywhere else in the park. Now, Bear Country reflected Walt Disney Imagineering's pattern of building entire immersive lands around a single attraction. This was essentially the same playbook used later for Splash Mountain. Its remote, low-traffic positioning meant the land doubled as a pressure relief valve for the rest of the park, giving guests a calmer space away from Main Street and the Fantasyland crowds. The Country Bear Jamboree concept originated with Walt Disney himself in the mid-1960s, who envisioned a band of talking, singing bear entertainers for a planned and never-built ski resort in California's Mineral King Valley. Now, Walt assigned the project to legendary Imagineer Mark Davis, also working with Albertino, who developed numerous bear band concepts, marching bands, mariachi bands, Dixieland bears, before landing on the country western format. And songwriter Ex Atencio, who we know is famous for writing Haunted Mansion's Grim Grinning Ghosts, teamed with composer George Bruns to write the show's music. The Country Bear Jamboree is considered one of the last attractions Walt Disney personally helped develop before his death, alongside Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, Era 2 brings us to Critter Country, and that was open from November 1988 to November 2024. The land was renamed in 1988 to anticipate the January 1989 opening of Splash Mountain. So before settling on Critter Country, Imagineers floated a concept to merge Bear Country with the neighboring New Orleans Square into a single Dixieland land. That idea was obviously turned down. Now, the new name was inspired by a line from the 1946 film Song of the South, the idea that the folks are closer to the critters and the critters are closer to the folks. The land kept some of its bear theming, but folded in other woodland creatures, huts, nests, and burrows scattered throughout the entire area. Some shops were renamed to de-emphasize the bear branding. So Ursus H. Bear's Wilderness Outpost became Crocodile Mercantile, which later became Pooh Corner in 1996. Now, of course, Era 3 is what we know it as today, which was opened in November 2024 as Bayou Country, really changing and adapting to the phenomena that is Tiana's Bayou Adventure, honoring the film Princess and the Frog. So let's jump into some of the attractions that we can find there in Bayou Country. Let's head in and take this journey. First up on the rivers of America are the Davy Crockett Explorer Canoes, formerly known as the Indian War Canoes. This attraction opened in 1956 and is still running today. This is the one attraction that has survived across all 4 eras of this land: Indian Village, Bear Country, Critter Country, and now Bayou Country, without ever physically relocating. Now, when this ride first originally opened, guests needed a D ticket to ride. While it opened in 1956 as the Indian War Canoes, it closed along with the rest of the Indian Village in 1971, but reopened almost immediately May 19, 1971, and was rethemed as the Davy Crockett Explorer Canoes. This was inspired by the hugely popular Davy Crockett miniseries that had aired on the Disneyland TV show in the mid-1950s. People were going wild over Davy Crockett during that era, and so guides traded their original look for coonskin caps. This officially became part of Bear Country when the land opened in 1972. Then, of course, it carried over into Critter Country in 1988, and now Bayou Country, all without the dock ever moving. Each canoe is 35 feet long, made of fiberglass, and holds 20 guests. It remains the only Disneyland attraction powered entirely by guest effort, i.e. paddling, with 2 cast members steering from the bow and the stern. Y'all, I've actually never ridden this attraction before. I have kind of held out for a long time thinking, listen, I'm not going to work for my fun. So the idea of paddling around, having to physically exert myself just to have a good time, it's never quite appealed to me. But don't worry, I will eventually get on this ride, okay? It's on my to-do list because I have a goal to ride every attraction, eat at every dining location, do every tour, all the things. So it's on my list. Some people really actually love this, and they've equated, like, the guides get to do some improv and they talk with you and they share information, and people have equated it to being similar in concept to the Jungle Cruise. So I guess maybe it won't be that bad, but you also might find me being one of those people that are just kind of relaxing on the side, maybe pretending to row. No, just kidding. I would totally be rowing. But so I can say from personal experience, I've never tried this ride. But if you have, let me know. What do you think? Are you pro canoes or anti canoes? I just have to know. So the attraction itself was briefly closed unexpectedly October 1998, and this sparked some huge rumors that the attraction was going away permanently, but it obviously didn't. It reopened the following June. Until 1995, only male cast members were trained to operate the canoes. The role went co-ed that year. Now, if you're looking for a little extra fun, you could become a cast member. And before the park opens, cast members have been known to race the canoes in competitions that are nicknamed Deadheads. So if that's your thing, I don't know, maybe become a cast member and you can get in your canoe racing. Now, Walt Disney World and Disneyland Paris both had their own versions of this attraction, but both closed permanently in 1994 amid company-wide cost-cutting. Tokyo Disneyland's version, Beaver Brothers Explorer Canoes, and Shanghai Disneyland's, simply the Explorer Canoes, are still operating. So you can be a worldwide traveler all aboard one little canoe. Now, let's head into the land itself. And our first stop of the land is actually some shopping. So, currently, we have a store called Ray's Berets, but in the past, it was actually originally the Indian Trading Post from 1962 to 1988. Then it became the Briar Patch from 1989 to 2024. And like I said before, with the new retheming of Tiana's Bayou Adventure, it has become Ray's Berets. So originally, when it was the Indian Trading Post, that, like I said, opened in 1962, and it was an addition to the existing Indian village. It functioned as part of the show. It was built to extend the atmosphere of the Indian village itself, selling merchandise that fit the surrounding theming. The broader Indian village was inspired by Walt Disney's desire for Frontierland to feel like an authentic, untamed frontier rather than a tidied, settled town. The trading post grew naturally out of that same goal of immersive realism, giving guests something tangible to take home from the experience. Imagineer Sam McKinn designed the broader Indian village tribal symbolism and layout, including its dance circle, researching reference material from the Disney Studio Library to inform the look the area of the trading post sat within. The vibe and theme for the trading post was rustic, educational, and tied to that authentic Native American craft goods, pottery, jewelry, and similar items consistent with the village's presentation. It reinforced Walt's broader insistence that Frontierland feel lived in, rather than just a stage set. It was more than just a souvenir stand. The Indian village itself closed in 1971 as it became outdated, and Imagineers needed to revamp this side of the park to compete with the buzz around the newly opened New Orleans Square. But remarkably, the Trading Post building survived that closure and kept operating for another 17 years, even as Bear Country grew up around it. The Indian Trading Post was replaced with the Briar Patch in 1989, and this was timed to the opening of Splash Mountain and Critter Country. It needed to tie this surviving retail space into the land's new Splash Mountain branding. The name itself is a direct reference to the Briar Patch from the Song of the South story used in the ride, where Brer Rabbit makes his escape. It started as a Splash Mountain themed merchandise and country goods store, then gradually shifted toward Winnie the Pooh merchandise as Pooh's presence and popularity in the land grew through the 1990s and 2000s. It was a good example of Disneyland's habit of letting retail theming drift gradually toward whatever's actually popular with guests, rather than staying frozen to an attraction's original branding. When Tiana's Bayou Adventure was announced, Imagineering needed a flagship retail anchor right at the ride's entrance. The Briar Patch's location made it a natural choice for the retheme. So in 2024, Ray's Beret opened. Now, it actually opened 3 weeks ahead of the ride, Tiana's Bayou Adventure itself. It was designed as one of the 2 new retail anchors, alongside Lewis's Critter Club, to extend Tiana's story beyond the ride itself and into the surrounding land as part of the broader Bayou Country transformation. It's framed as the coziest cabin in Critter Country, the in-story home of Firefly character Ray Raymond and his Firefly family. Interior details include blue lanterns, new foliage, updated portraits of Ray with his family, and an animated window looking out into the bayou. It is so adorable. Even if you're not going in there to shop and buy anything, I highly recommend you go take a peek. I'm always just so floored at what Imagineering does, and oh my goodness, how creative they are. It really is a cute and cozy little corner of the parks. Like the name Ray Berets leads us to know, is they sell headwear. So hats and headwear, ears, some apparel and accessories, and a few toys. It continues Imagineering's modern approach to building in-story retail. Shops aren't just gift shops. They're framed as a character's actual home or business, deepening the land's narrative the same way the ride queue does. Now that we've got our fix with a little shopping, maybe a new pair of mini ears in hand, let's keep heading through the bayou. But first, we need to stop at the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. This attraction opened in April of 2003, and Disney had wanted a Winnie Pooh attraction in Disneyland since the late 1970s, and I can't blame them. Winnie the Pooh is one of my all-time favorites, so you know this attraction has my heart dearly. Now, even after drafting concepts for the 1983 Fantasyland overhaul, Pooh was left out of that expansion entirely. That is just unacceptable. A Pooh-themed spinning ride similar to the Mad Tea Party using spinnable honeypots was drafted again in the late 1980s for the planned Mickey's Toontown, but lost out to Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin. That, to me, is just blasphemy, but I'll be okay with it because I actually prefer this form of the attraction as opposed to Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin, because you guys know I don't like spinny rides, and I wouldn't have been able to ride the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh if it was a spinny ride. So never fear, of course, by the late 1990s, with Pooh rides already open at Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland, pressure mounted for Disneyland to follow suit, as they should. Give the bear his time. But the park had very little room to work with building something new. Critter Country, with the increasingly underperforming Country Bear Jamboree, wah wah, was identified as the best, or rather really the only, available footprint. So ultimately, the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh attraction replaced the Country Bear Jamboree specifically. Imagineers had floated an alternative, a Country Bear themed dark ride called Critter Country 500, intended to preserve the bear characters in a new format. Management rejected the pitch. I agree with them. Listen, you guys, you know I'm a huge Winnie the Pooh fan. Give me all the Winnie the Pooh. The Country Bear Jamboree, of course, closed permanently on September 9th, 2001, with the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh opening roughly a year and a half later on April 11th, 2003. The budget was reportedly around $30 million, with the bulk of it spent reformatting the old Country Bear show building rather than new construction. Show producer Bruce Gordon, who is also involved with Splash Mountain, helped develop the ride's story sequencing, including the transition from the Heffalumps and Woozles dream sequence into the Honey Haven finale. Disneyland's version uses beehive-shaped ride vehicles rather than the honey pot vehicles used at Disney World, tying the vehicle design specifically to the Critter Country setting. Each honey beehive vehicle has its own name, such as Heffalbee. Imagineer Raymond Kinman, a woodcarver, hand-carved the entrance sign guests pass under. I love that sign. I actually did not know until this research that that was hand-carved. That's amazing. It's such a whimsical, cozy, nostalgic sign. The ride uses a Pepper's Ghost effect, which is the same illusion technique used in the Haunted Mansion, for the scene where Pooh floats into his dream. I have always wondered if that was the same effect, and, well, now we know, right? Mounted auto animatronic heads of Max, Buff, and Melvin, 3 trophy characters from the old Country Bear Jamboree's mile-long bar, are still mounted above an archway, visible if a rider looks up and back while leaving the Heffalumps and Woozles room. I now have something else to look for. One of my favorite things about that ride is towards the end of the ride, we go through Pooh's bedroom. And if you look on the floor towards the end of the bed, there are the cutest pair of slippers. I wish they actually made these slippers in real life. They are so adorable. This ride, some people find kitschy and silly. I agree with those, but it is such a nostalgic pull for me. I grew up with Winnie the Pooh as one of my best friends of all time, and I spent many days of my childhood spending time with this wonderful group of friends. So, any chance I have to hop on this ride and relive my youth, say hello to my good friends, I am all about. Well, now that I'm done crying over my childhood, let's keep adventuring through this little nook of the woods and let's head to Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain opened July 17th, which is Disneyland's birthday, in 1989. It was conceived in 1983 by Imagineer Tony Baxter, reportedly while he was stuck in traffic on the Santa Ana Freeway. That's just so amazing to me to know that some of these rides are created in the most mundane moments. These Imagineers are just so creative, you guys. The most I think I've ever thought of on a freeway is trying to think about what I'm going to cook for dinner. Baxter was solving three problems at once: how to find a use for the increasingly unpopular auto animatronics from America Sings, closing due to poor attendance, how to draw guests into the still underused Bear Country, and how to get a log flume into Disneyland at all. Then president of Walt Disney Attractions, Dick Nunes, had been pushing for a log flume. Imagineers were initially lukewarm, feeling that the format was too generic for Disneyland. Log flume rides had become very popular at different types of theme parks, and they kind of felt like, we've seen this over and over again. But Baxter, of course, solved the puzzle by theming the flume with the animated segments of the Song of the South, since the woodland animal style of the America Sings figures matched the film's characters well enough to be reused, which was a major cost saver. Baxter has said his own childhood memories of seeing Song of the South in theatrical re-release helped inspire the idea. Showboat designer Bob Gurr was brought in specifically to design the Zippity Dee Lady, the showboat seen in the ride's finale. And veteran ride engineer Tom Morris handled the site layout and engineered the track. Other location ideas were considered before settling on the Bear Country entrance, included the Fantasyland Theater site and behind New Orleans Square train station. The working title was actually originally Zippity Dee Run. However, studio chief and Disney CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, suggested the name Splash Mountain, partly to tie in with the 1984 film Splash. However, the ride itself has absolutely nothing to do with the movie Splash, so riddle me that. But here we are, Splash Mountain. Now, the budget swelled to roughly $75 million, making it one of the most expensive Imagineering projects to date at the time. So for comparison, the entire 1955 park, cost about $17 million, which was, conversion, $80 million in 1980 dollars. So, you guys, it was still, even in 1955 time, an extremely, extremely expensive attraction. According to Alice Davis, the production ran so far over budget that closing America Sings and harvesting its animatronics was the only way to keep the project financially viable. A wise woman she was. Each reused audio animatronic figure required roughly 80 hours of reprogramming plus several months of rewiring. Now, before the indoor portion of the ride, guests heard snoring from a cave. A direct tribute to Rufus, the unseen bear who could be heard snoring near the original Country Bear entrance, where he supposedly worked backstage at Grizzly Hall fixing lights between Country Bear Jamboree shows. I think he was doing something different than fixing lights, y'all. The cave was initially still labeled as Rufus's, but it became Briar Bear's Cave by 1992. Despite using the same song, Splash Mountain's Disneyland and Walt Disney World's version used different musical arrangement styles. big band orchestral in California, and bluegrass country vibes in Florida. Now, Tokyo Disneyland and Magic Kingdom versions opened later in October of 1992. Now, since neither of those parks had ever had an America Sings attraction, this required entirely new audio animatronics built from scratch. Now, despite its popularities, Disney announced in June of 2020 that the Disneyland and Disney World Magic Kingdom versions would be rethemed around the Princess and the Frog movie, with development reportedly already underway since 2019, before the online petition campaigns that circulated during the 2020 George Floyd protests. The Disneyland's version of Splash Mountain closed May 31st, 2023. Imagineer Carmen Smith later described the timing as a moment where leadership felt ready to move forward on a concept that had already been in development. Now today we have Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which opened November 15th of 2024. Now, this change was led by Walt Disney Imagineering Senior Executive Creative Producer Cherita Carter, with original Splash Mountain creator Tony Baxter returning as a creative advisor. The character design for the ride's new figures were led by Imagineer Laura West and Princess and the Frog animator Eric Goldberg, who consulted on character work. Costume design for Tiana's in-ride look came from the Disney Live Entertainment's Ida Muldrow. The Imagineering team made multiple research trips to Louisiana, visiting the French market and bayous, consulting with cultural institutions, chefs, academics, and musicians, and experiencing Mardi Gras in New Orleans firsthand. New Orleans artist Sharika Mahdi was commissioned to paint 4 pieces, each built around a different theme, to guide the attraction's visual direction. The Q's mural was designed by Louisiana artist Malika Favorite. The exterior weather vane was hand-forged by Louisiana blacksmiths Daryl Reeves and Karina Roca. Because New Orleans itself is famously flat, Imagineers explain the ride's elevation change by setting the attraction on a fictional salt dome, taking inspiration from the real Avery Island, Louisiana. Original music was composed by Grammy-winning New Orleans musicians P.J. Morton and Terrence Blanchard. Blanchard had also provided Lewis's trumpet playing in the original film. The score also incorporates music from the film itself, originally composed by Randy Newman. Annika Noni Rose, Bruno Compas, Michael Leon Woolley, and Jennifer Lewis all reprised their original film roles for the attraction. The ride includes 48 audio animatronic figures total, combining traditional animatronics with projected animation supplied by Walt Disney Animation Studios. The Disneyland version opened November 15, 2024, which was also the date Critter Country was officially renamed Bayou Country. A poster in Tiana's office references Firefly 5 plus Lou, a nod to the real-life Firefly 5 plus 2, a band formed by Disneyland animation artists that performed at Disneyland in its early years. The Q details reveal Tiana's father, James, served in the 369th Infantry Regiment, a segregated World War I unit, in the American Expeditionary Forces. A recipe card for Tiana's beignets is visible on the kitchen table in the queue, so maybe snap a picture as you're walking through and you can create those. The stars on the water tower's tiara detail are a nod to Ray and Evangeline, the Firefly characters from the film. Many people are fans of this ride, from its original creation of Splash Mountain and now to its rethemed story of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And I will be honest with you guys, I have only ever ridden this attraction from its original Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure one time. And let me tell you, that will be a one and done experience. I rode it last summer on Disneyland's birthday, July 17th, with my best friend and our family. I only did this because it was also her 40th birthday, and it is a ride she loves. She wanted to do it. Whatever the birthday girl wanted, she was going to get. So there I was, all ponchoed up, riding Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So I've never actually seen it when it was Splash Mountain. You won't ever get me on that ride again. Okay? We've even talked about going back other times for her birthday in the future, and she, has brought it up, and I was like, you got it for your milestone 40th birthday. That's all you're going to get. I got soaked. Oh my goodness. And I do not like getting wet. So that's why I've never ridden the ride. I don't like it. Don't get me wet. Not about it. No way. So I was so prepared. I was all wrapped up. I brought all the things. I changed my shoes. Like, guys, I was trying to be so prepared. But the water came over the sides of the logs so much that it completely drenched my feet, my pants. I mean, I was soaked up to like my thighs. I couldn't believe it. Anyways, if you like getting wet, absolutely go on this ride, or if you don't care, pop off with yourself, but not for me. I will say though, the theming, the music, the ride itself is so beautiful. And I wish that I could ride it, just take the water out. Can we just take the water out and I'll just ride it like a dark ride? Anyways, I mean, you should definitely check it out. Or if you don't want to get wet, at least watch some ride through videos. But what do you think? Are you a Tiana's Bayou Adventure fan? Is it something that you're like, I've got to do this, I love it? Or are you like me and never again will you get in that log ride and send yourself through the bayou? Let me know. Let me know, guys. All right, now that we have barely escaped near-death drowning on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, let's keep moving on because we need to do some shopping to replace our drenched clothing. And there's no better place than the shop at the far end of the land. That's right, we're talking about Ursus H. Bear's Wilderness Outpost, then turned Crocodile Mercantile, then turned Pooh Corner, then Pooh Corner's Treats, and Lewis's Critter Club. Oh my goodness, I told you guys, this land has been through many iterations of itself. So Ursus H. Bear's Wilderness Outpost was open from 1972 to 1988. It opened alongside the rest of Bear Country as the land's flagship retail shop. It was built as part of the original Bear Country package, giving the new land a retail anchor consistent with its Pacific Northwest wilderness theming. It was a rustic country store named for the fictional Ursus H. Bear, presented in the land's lore as the founder of Grizzly Hall, the theater that housed the Country Bear Jamboree. This was retail used to round out a land's storytelling, guests meeting Ursus H. Bear through signage and naming, even if they never saw the bear himself. It closed in 1988 as part of the Critter Country retheme when the land's branding moved away from bears specifically and toward that broader critter identity ahead of Splash Mountain's 1989 opening. From 1988 to 1996, this place was now called Crocodile Mercantile, and it was positioned at the far end of the land near the Splash Mountain exit. If you dared to enter a shop called Crocodile Mercantile, you could find country goods and handcrafted items, official Splash Mountain souvenirs, and in a detail very much of its era, cigarettes were sold here through the late 1980s and into the 90s. Its signature visual was a massive crocodile suspended from the rafters. It was a practical retreat for Splash Mountain riders, a place to dry off, cool down in summer, and shop for holiday gifts or new clothing, reinforcing the land's function as guests' wilderness retreat even after the bears left. Now, this shop then became replaced in 1996 with Pooh's Corner. The idea of the shop transition really was capitalizing on Winnie the Pooh's rising popularity in the Disney franchise lineup during the 1990s, well before the character had its own ride in the land. It was a traditional Disney gift shop built around Winnie the Pooh and the 100-Acre Wood merchandise, a shift away from the quaint country shop feel of its predecessor, more towards the conventional themed retailing. Now, in 2003, when the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh opened, Pooh Corner expanded significantly, absorbing the footprint of the former Teddy Barra Swingin' Arcade and the Briar Bar to become one large connected Pooh Mall. This reflects Disneyland's pattern of letting retail real estate follow franchise momentum. Pooh merchandise arrived in the lands years before Pooh actually got his own attraction. And if you guys have ever been into this store, you know it is adorably themed. I absolutely love looking up at the ceiling because it all looks like a honeycomb in there. Definitely go in and check it out. Now, when Bayou Country opened in November of 2024, Pooh Corner's large footprint was split into two. The confectionery and treats side remained Pooh Corner, while the left-hand merchandise side became Lewis's Critter Club, the second of the two flagship shops that were built to extend Tiana's Bayou Adventure storytelling in the land. Now, this side of the shop is framed as Alligator Lewis's local hotspot, his Critter Friends clubhouse. Interior details include carved animal medallions on the walls identifying the ride's various Critter Band musicians, plus moss, string lights, and lit candles for atmosphere. They sell apparel, accessories, home decor, and other merchandise featuring Tiana and the ride's Critter Band characters. Now, like Ray's Berets, this completes the move toward fully in-story retail. Guests aren't just buying souvenirs. They're stepping into a space the ride's characters supposedly inhabited. Oh, friends, what a journey through this little corner of the park. From an Indian village that opened with Disneyland itself to a wilderness retreat built around some singing bears to a log flume that became one of Imagineer's biggest gambles, all the way to Tiana paddling us through the bayou today. This land has packed almost 70 years of reinvention into 4 acres. I hope you walked away with at least one detail you never noticed before, because I sure found a few while putting this one together. Listeners, thank you as always for being here, for letting me geek out about a snoring bear named Rufus for longer than was probably necessary, and for sticking with this little podcast through every twist and turn. It genuinely means so much to me. Now, before I let you go, let's talk about what's next. We are staying right here in Bayou Country, but next episode, we're shifting gears to talk entertainment. That's right, friends. The bears are finally getting their moment. We're going to dig into the full story of the Country Bear Jamboree, from Walt's original idea all the way through its closing days, plus everything else that's brought music and magic to this corner of the park over the years. So make sure you're following or subscribed wherever you listen to your podcast so that next Bayou Country episode lands right in your feed the moment it drops. Now, friends, if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow, rate, or leave a review. It truly helps more Disney bears discover the magic of the parks. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Once Upon a Castle Podcast or on TikTok at Virginia K. West. Now, until next time, my little critters, keep the magic alive, keep the memories close, and as always, I'm wishing you a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Bye-bye.